know, um, you know, when you park somewhere, sometimes you forget where it is if you don't pay attention to it. So, anyways, we're here, ready, turning. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and stop. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and stop. Okay. Hands up. Reach down. 1, 2, 3. To your right. To your left. Center. Inhale. Exhale. Okay, hands up. Reach down. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Center. Inhale. Exhale. Okay, hands in your waist. Circular movements. Nine, 10, 1, 2. Center, reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Center, cross, knees, circular movements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Center. Okay. Neck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Back and forth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Center. Tilt to the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Center. Rotating. 1, 2, 3. Reverse. 1, 2, 3, center, hands up. Pull in, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Okay, spread your feet, turn your shoulders. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, and stop. Okay, turn. Stretch it out a bit. Okay, we'll switch. Switch. And switch. Switch again, straighten front knee. Switch. 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 Center. Okay, we'll shake it out. Okay, hands up. Pull an inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Okay, hands at your waist. Shoulder roll. Reverse. Okay, press. Release. Exhale. Inhale. And stop. Okay, hands up again. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Okay, wrists. Reverse. Okay, palms down. Bigger circle. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and stop. Okay, shake it out. Just go side to side. Okay, so when you go side to side, there's a point where you can actually bring that leg in from the opposite side, and you got to find that balance point. So when you find that balance point, this leg actually is really just, if you relax it, kind of free falling into this vertical position. So if you let it go, it'll kind of bump into your ankle. So you're here. And when you're there and the foot's close to the other foot, you're actually just supporting yourself on one leg. And that's when you would go up. So you have to find that position. So that's sort of breaking it down to what actually happens. And when we get good enough with it, you start to move from here, and it's naturally going up. And when you lift, feel the lift completely. So then you won't have a conflict in the motion. And center. Okay. Now we put it down and we go to the insert needle. Then the hands go up and down. And you're really just lifting from the knee of the supporting leg. And you switch back to the other side. So that's total weight bearing. You're carrying 100% of your weight on that supporting leg. And okay, shake it out. All right, deep breathing. So a lot of times people lose their balance, and you try to figure it out, but there's a certain amount of, body mechanics and allowing your body to adapt. So shifting your weight from side to side is one of those, because if the hips are tight, it goes over, but you're not really releasing. So everything is about letting go of your tension in these areas. So when you shift even to this position, then you'll find that vertical position. See? So let's try it like this. Ready? So we're going to swing. We're here. And this is actually what we're doing. Now the little twist in the shoulder keeps it more streamlined. And go to the other side. And center. Then we stand like this and goes opposite. Now your hips actually have to turn a little bit like this. Right. And switch. And center. All right, shake it out. Deep breathing. and exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. So, everything that we're doing actually is three-dimensional. And there's some volume in your movement. So when we just stand here, we try to swing our leg across the front of the body. It's actually impossible to do that. Because if you're trying to swing your leg across, you'd hit this leg, right? If you think about it, you spread your leg and you bring it back in. That's about where it goes because it's only one plane of movement. But because you're going from side to side, you're going past your body and you're going through your center. So the only way you can do that is if you crank your hip over like this. So that's a closing of the joint. And then there's an opening of a joint when you go back to neutral, right? So when you turn like this, your hips are at about a 45-degree angle, and it allows your foot to pass through the front. So you have to get that joint into that position while you bring your weight over to it. And then you start to swing. And then it actually allows you to sustain that position a bit. So you're getting a little bit of a stretch there in order to get that twist. So stretching is just increasing range of motion. That's what I generally say, that, while, we see splits and we see all these open movements, it's really the joint allowing it to open because there's no tension there. So if there's tension in the hips and you turn like this, then it won't happen because your hip can't fold. But that's what's happening here, and that's what's happening here. But because we're moving in this direction, and we have this position where this is twisted over, and we're going in the opposite direction, you're compensating for the equal opposite action, and you're also getting some response across your body. Because, even though we have all these parts, it's all somehow connected. And it's connected so that you can compensate for, center of mass. We have to adjust. Every time we shift, we have to adjust. That's why we move. Now, if you watch someone walk that's pretty stiff, or they don't move the upper body, then it looks like this. So that's not a natural way of moving. More natural to do this, right? When you walk. And we walk, and we go backwards. There's a coordination where the body will do that. It should do it innately because the body, will do that on its own. But because we overthink it sometimes, or we don't even pay attention to it, this excessive stiffness is just, that could be a personality trait, or it could be just the body not letting go. So we have to sometimes override a lot of these things to get things to happen. And overriding it is, just being conscious and mindful that all these things have to happen. So that's thinking through it kind of to get the understanding, and then the body will begin to pick up on it, and then it figures it out. So. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so so it's hooking. Yeah. So actually, if you look at the body formation, if we did this, feet parallel, about 2 or 3 inches apart, and we turned our feet like this, and then we turned our feet like this, and we turned our heels out like this, you're pigeon-toed. And the pigeon-toedness of this position allows your musculature to turn your feet in, and you're in this, it's called an hourglass stance because it looks like an hourglass, or a figure-8 stance. We have this stance, several styles of Kung Fu uses a stance like that. We have this stance in one of our breathing exercises, and it's called a figure-8 stance because if you look at your feet and they're like this, that's the character for the Chinese 8, 7, 8. So that represents 8. So it's called a number 8 stance. as a reference. This is what that stance is. But your hips are twisted in. So there must be a reason it's important to twist it in. Just like when we open our stance, the hips have to move. So that's taking you in a position and creating somewhat of a static position. So what's this? Turning in and out is footwork. So when we turn out like this, we step through. When we turn in or to 90 degrees, it becomes a turn as a U-turn. So your feet actually control and dictate direction of movement. So the pivoting foot should be unweighted, because if you have weight on it, you have to get the weight off it in order to shift. So I'll use two ways of getting your weight off your feet. You can sit back to take it off and take that way, or you can lift the body and turn. Because when you lift the body, you do a bit of unweighting, like the skiers do or skaters do. You have to kind of unweight the supporting foot in order for you to reduce the supporting weight that foot is on. So you're actually freeing it up. You're actually going weightless for a split second. So, some of the skiers, if you're a skier, you could actually unweight by pressing down. So you press down, you free fall like this. There's a split second that between the point of dropping and releasing that you're weightless. So that is a response, and then you're going that way. So it's kind of a bounce. So when we do, say, that kick like this, and then we're going to sit back and then we spin, that's kind of going into that weightless mode. Or if you're in a position like this and you spin like this, you're spinning off the supporting leg, but actually you drive that movement from your torso, your shoulder moves, and it spins off your heel. So that just gives you some samples of how we pivot and unweight and how critical that is. But it's really like this type of thing becomes also torque. If you're torquing your lower half of your body, then it's going to create a winding and unwinding of your body. Because our body is segmented and you can twist and turn. We see it in the hands. If we took a towel, do this. But do we see it in the body in the vertical positions as twisting and turning? Right? You had a question? Mm-hmm. It's the toe, because you're turning the hip, so your foot is kicking that way. So on a technique side, what you're doing is you're hooking someone's leg, and then you can turn it out the other way. So hooking is like you take your hand and you turn it over. You're hooking the hand as a technique. So you're using this joint as a lead. So when my foot goes this way, and then this, so on the back side, you're actually kicking out the heel, like that. You see? So it creates a stroke. Every movement is a direction. Every direction can be a force. So if I'm doing this and then doing this, they're actually equal opposite reactions. So what's the purpose of a movement that has equal opposite reaction? Because on the functionality side, if you captured someone's arm, you would pull and kick. If you kick and you miss, then when you stroke back and the hands go the opposite way, it's a trip. So you're actually hooking and tripping your opponent. Now, if you did this exercise like this, then your hips are actually opening again this way. So, what's the value of doing that? Because if I go this way and I want to turn this way, then I would have to point my toe that way. So it's just more rotation in the hip. So we're doing that when we turn. So when we turn and we spin and we turn like the 360 kick, that's what's happening in the lower part of your body. So when you wind your feet up, your body has nothing else to do but unwind it. So that's why your waist and your torso and your legs and your upper body has to be coordinated and synchronized to adjust and compensate for, those type of movements. Because everything we see most of the time is in front of us, and everything is kind of linear in this direction. We don't see stuff that goes like this. That's up here. Then when we start to see this, we don't see it in the lower part of the body. So then the legs really not familiar with going out of this frontal position. So I mean, all of this stuff is important, as it prevention of age-related degeneration. But all of this stuff happens to athletes in a different form. You have to move through these positions in order, to create the power that you need that's generated from the legs, and that's from shifting weight, lifting and falling and rising. So falling is descending. Just like, golfers have this, like Tiger Woods, who's had these serious injuries. They don't know how he could recover. But his right ankle has been crushed, probably from the impact of the car. So, a severe injury like that, when it heals, your connective tissue and the musculature is not going to be as responsive, because scar tissue is kind of really not good for creating good movement. So it's big recovery, but I don't know, how, the sports trainers at that level, how they can help you do this, because it's very expensive and it takes a lot of discipline to go through that. And then, when you have rods and pins in your joints, they're stiff, so it's a little bit, it's not as forgiving as the real joint, so it could be pretty bad. So, most super athletes, can overcome a lot of things, but it depends on still your apparatus, right? You can do certain things, So anyways, so that's what we're doing on the lower half of the body. This is important. You don't have to do it fast. And what we will recognize once we get the motion, so we have to relax this hip to kind of find that center, and you can practice, that in different ways. Like if you at home, if you use even like if you're at an entrance way in the door, you have the two sides. You can actually stand between the door and just do this, right? Or you can switch your hands. But the key thing is to try to get this leg to find its center and let this kind of swing like a pendulum and use gravity. When it gets to here, it's going to fall backwards. And then you kind of, so just have intent in one direction. So in other words, you can try, kick your heel out, and then, But face it directly so that you would go like this, So you try to get your leg over there. Twist your hips, but your ankle, your ankle can stay firm, and then don't hold so tightly here, so that your shoulder will kind of give too, because if you hold it tight, it's going to limit your range of motion. So just let your shoulder and your hip kind of go. The relationship between the shoulder and hip is something that it's throughout. So what's the shoulder-hip relationship? When the shoulder moves, the hip moves, right? So when we walk, is it the shoulder and the hip? When we go side to side, isn't it the shoulder and the hip? So not moving the shoulders is like not moving your arms. So that's just, to give you a little insight on what has to happen when you want to build integration of body. So then, So a lot of this is sustaining that hip position until it kind of knows, So it does take some practice and put some effort into it. Okay, silk rilling. So we're here, and we go forward and back. So the same thing happens. We have to shift the weight, relax the hips, and then push and sort of push and pull, if you're thinking of it like that. Separate the hands and turn. Merge the hands as closing. Opening as spreading. Opening is also splitting. Sitting back and merging to hold the ball, or merging to go to the oblique arm position like this. We separate the hands. So every position is really a joint position depending on where we're looking. We look at the shoulders like that. We look at the elbows, they're folding and unfolding. The shoulders are twisting and turning because the spine is rotating. The sinking and folding is in the hips, regulated through the knees, supported by the ankles, and the feet are relaxed and gripping slightly with the toes. And as you shift forward and back, you're going to feel the different pressures in the soles of the feet. Okay, we switch the other side. There's your 360 or 180 degree turn pivot. So the important thing is whenever the hand is up like this, either side, you have to relax the elbow. So you see, when you relax the elbow, what happens, it starts to descend, right? So sink the elbow, relax the shoulder is that. If you're lifting up and you create the descending movement, your goal is to track the movement, but then your shoulder only goes up and down, and it goes over here, and it goes up and down. That's all it does. It goes over here, it goes up and down. But you have to find that line of motion, because when the hand goes up, if you're tracking from the thumb or the wrist, you'll see the hand slanting up. Now, if I just go like this, it's really not a pattern or a configuration. When I go like this, if I turn my body over to this corner, which is the 45 line, and I track that line, they're gonna go right by my body like this, and then turn, and then turn. This hand is actually doing something similar to what we did here, because I can't actually go through this direction unless my hip is like this. So I can't actually bring my hand across the front of my body unless I give some clearance, which is coming down while it's here, and then I turn to let it go by the body, right? So when we're doing this and we're stroking down, it's really coming in front of the body based on how we regulate and turn the hand during the transition. So how do we get to this point, from this point, without crashing into the side of our body? When we get to this point, okay, I'll do it in front of the mirror. When we get to this point, when I get to here, I'm going to hit my leg, right? Do you see that? If I come down like this, then this is where I turn. and then it comes back again. And then this is where I turn. So the turning of the torso allows you the space to do that movement. So, so movements are a blend of a combination of things. Some of it is arms, some of it is your body, some of it is your legs. I call that the summation of components. So the more of the components that you have working together, the less strength or effort required in that movement. So if I just do this, it's kind of isolated and physical. If I do this, and I do this, then I do this, I'm leading and following the movements through the body, and the movements become much more gentle and much more smooth and directed. Yeah. So your elbow is a relationship between the hands and the shoulder, right? So if we use the eyes and the nose and the eyebrow or the forehead as a guideline, then if my hand goes like this, if you say, where is the elbow at this position, the elbow is relatively adapting to where this hand passes the forehead. So the size of the circle referencing your body is really where the hands pass the eyes. And you accommodate that by when and where your elbow turns. So while the elbow directs the movement, the size of movement is a relationship between your forehead and your fingers. And when you do that, you have a relative position that uses your body as a reference point. So because of that, you have accuracy of movement, because your forehead is going to be the same forehead you're doing it every time. Your arm is not going to change in length. So while we're learning this, our body is actually learning to track the movement. But we have to understand in space how we go from point A to point B to point Z all the way through, using, depending on how many minute transitions there are. Is it the same as cloud hands? Okay, so it has its sort of commonality in motion. So this is cloud hands. This is Jade Lady Work Shadow, right? This is moving to the outside, moving to the outside. So it's the same circle. Up and down, it's the same circle. But when you're going through this learning process, you're learning all these postures at different places in the form. But your body, your brain looks at it as that's cloud hands, that's Jade Lady Work Shadow, that's strum the lute or whatever movement you have. Like this to this is a similar movement. It's just a piece of it. So when you make one circle, at the different points in space, they have a different, position for a specific posture. But it all ends up as the same action practically. Yeah. Uh, it turns at the correct time, so when you're here, when it gets to, say, your centered point at the oblique line, then the body picks up on that. And then when it gets to here, it picks up on the fact that you don't want to do this. And why don't you want to do this? Because if you start to do that, then you open your shoulder. You go into a compromised position where your body is not really in a natural position. And then when you go down, it's really not in the right place. So using the mirror, if I come through here, this is about the point you begin to turn. When you open here, this is about the point where you start to lift. When you get to here, that's taking your hand to the left to drop down naturally like this. And then when I get to here, I turn to here, and then I go forward, and I turn. So I call those the phases in your transition, your move, because what this is doing in each phase and each relative position to your body becomes a directional force. So forces that are being created, if you use gravity to your advantage, then you're really taking half of the physical side of the movement out, right? Gravity is going to take your arm down. Gravity is working against you when you lift. So you regulate the lift and you regulate the release, then you have balance and motion. So balance and motion means efficiency. You know, when you drive your car up a hill, it uses a lot more gas. When you get to the top, it just descends with gravity and it accelerates. But it accelerates sort of passively because of your weight of your car, because of the momentum of everything, and it just starts to free fall. So why not use that type of concept in movement? So if I'm lifting a little bit like this, and once I get to a position, I free fall with the movement, then all I did was release. And releasing allows you to not use, excessive contraction of muscle. The other thing is when you release, the only thing you have to do is regulate when and how you release. So that balance and movement becomes circulation. And circulation is what you're bringing to your cells and, filling the voids where there's energy being used. But because we're using very little energy, we're not wasting and depleting the storages in our body. So then you can go a lot longer, right? You can drive longer distance if you use less gas. So if you're going uphill and then you start to accelerate when you don't need to, you're kind of wasting energy. So when we do that, if we go up and then we start to go like this, we're wasting a lot of energy. Now it depends, a lot of young people want to waste a lot of energy because they're trying to burn calories. But you can't burn enough calories actually to lose weight unless you eat less. So a lot of times people say, well, I'm going to the gym. So they end up working out, burning all these calories. Then they go home and say, well, I just worked out like this. I can eat a lot more. So this kind of becomes kind of productive. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting if you go into it like this, because now you're looking at your movement. How does that movement get to be efficient and smooth? It's just that. Yeah. So that's what practice does. You can discover these actions through constant practice. And that's how we learn things anyways. It's a journey. You go through the path and you discover things along the way. So when you're doing movement, it's a path. You follow it, you do it often enough, then your body, if we have the mind intent to be, gentle and soft and use less energy and not waste, the muscular strength, then you're going to be working toward that goal. Then your body will kind of figure out what's the natural stroke, what's the lift. The natural stroke is not natural because we can't find the direction. That's why golf is so difficult, right, Nan? How do you find the natural stroke using gravity, sinking, and shifting weight? How do you get your golf club to go like this, and when you shift down and then you transfer the weight into the... So it's between that, and the swing, you really have to be pretty natural because your body just wouldn't be able to take it when you're forcing the movement. So that's why even anything that requires hitting an object requires gravity, natural strength, and direction. And it's all tied to, if it's a tennis stroke, it's like that. If it's a baseball bat, it's like that. If it's a sword, it's like that. So all of these things are required as a control of movement. You sink your elbow, you open, you close, same stroke. Doesn't matter if it's we have a sword form that goes like this. That's like a backhand. But how many people, when they first learn a backhand, can shift their weight? Or they take a step, and then they have to take the other step. That's footwork. So that's challenges the human has to go through to find out how to be efficient. Now, the people that are natural, it just happens because they do it. And after 10 or 15 times, they already kind of get the idea. So Anyways, so where are we? We just did silk reeling, and we're ready to cross and open. 1, 2, 3. So we're getting, like, through our fundamentals, an idea how this supports the form. Because I always talk about how important these are. But like this, we're here. That's how we do the kick. The hands are like this, right? Now when we cross like this, here's your center line. Both hands are on the oblique. You see a cross hand is like this, but when I seat my elbows and wrists, I find this position. When I turn to here, this is the 45 corner. When I lift my elbows and open like this, you have an upper body movement, and this hand is pointing straight, and this hand is to the side. Okay, and then relax the hips so you can sit without tilting. And then once we're here, we relax the elbows and we merge back into the center. We lift the elbows and expand from there. So when we expand from here, it's not because we're moving our arms. It's because I'm turning the body. Okay. So why does this happen? Because we're moving our arms and we can't control the rounding and straightening of the two sides because both hands want to do this. Because the brain is thinking the two sides are doing this movement, but it doesn't detect the fact that one is longer than the other. So that's a little bit more difficult to do because when we cross here, they're both the same position. Elbow angle is the same. But yet when I go like this one turns and it's maintained as a round, and this hand becomes a straight. So then that has to be figured out. But if you're not turning your body, it's harder to figure out because you're committed to an action and already committed to a shape. But yet if I go like this and I relax and I turn my body, my arms actually become independent. And then when I sink this elbow and come back to center, your arms are doing separate things. So when the hands and body wants to do certain things, you drive the movement from the body, let the arms become somewhat independent as far as what it can do, but you combine them together as a passive action where the body turns and opens like this. But at the same time, we have to realize that when I open like this, I straighten my knee. And then I bend my knees. And I straighten my knees. So that's what happens when you do your kicks. When you fold and you kick, you lift. So while my front hand is elongating, so does my body and my feet. Because when I elongate on the rise, I'm releasing and lifting from below, right? So you're lifting, then the body becomes light. Because you're really going, you're uplifting and you're going, letting gravity not affect that movement, so you start to float. See what I mean? Yeah, so when you do this, and what happens when we turn to here, you're going to look at the spine. I'm here. It's over my foot. When I sink to here, my line is here. So you're stable here. This actually is up. This is up. This is out. This is up. So that's finding your center line supported by the heel of the back foot. So all these are concepts and principles, but your body has to understand this. So learning here is not learning here. It's housing information to be translated for the body to adapt and figure that out. So we can figure it out intellectually, saying, well, that's center of mass, this hand is doing this hand is doing that. But what does the body know? It has to understand it through sensitivity, feeling, and proprioception adjustments based on speed of movement, angular, exchange of those, and then the spatialness of that. Because I'm going from here to there, and here as positions, right? So here's the 45-degree line, but actually the relative position for this is really between there and there. So you really don't go much more than 90 degrees. If I turn to here, there's your 90 degrees. Here's your 0. There's your 45. So each one of those becomes a change in position because I started here, I find my center here, I spread from here. But then I have to get back to here, so I sink my elbow and I merge back to here. And then if I want to turn to here to accentuate the movement, then you're doing that to find your center, and then it expands. Very little physical arm movement, just channeling the movement using the energy required to do it. So that's using less strength or no strength. So when they say use no strength, they mean the correct amount of strength to do the task, whatever is going on. So that's this side. Then we're on the opposite side. It's the same. So we find center, we expand and sink and contract, open and close. So I call this the opening and close exercise. So what's the opening? This is closing, opening and closing, opening and closing, opening and closing, open and close, open and close. So while we see something that comes together as closing, anything that's coming together is closing. So if I'm here and I'm bringing my hands to a cross-hand position, what's closing? The space between your arms, your armpit and your elbows sink, and they're closing. In the lower half of your body, because I'm open here and I relax here, then this hip is closing and this is opening when I open like this. And that's actually closing and opening. So the relationship between this and this and this become opening and closing. That was the opening and closing we needed to do this. That's the opening and closing now to do this. And then the hips and the shoulders are working as a relationship. So this is pretty, complex ideas. So when you first started to learn the Tai Chi form, all of this was there, but we couldn't figure it out, or we wouldn't even think about that when we're learning sequence, because our whole focus is on what's happening next in the form. So once you get past form, you have to come into this kind of level, and this is actually evolving into another level of understanding. So that's all we're doing, is trying to change the mindset of how we do movements, like shifting of weight and swinging the legs. So this is the theory behind it, right? All right, so now we're here. We're just getting through the warm-ups. Okay. Okay, so we did this, now we're here. Sink the elbow, relax the shoulder. This is your vertical elbow, and this is the vertical body. So while we do this and we simulate the movement by watching, most of us are really good at this, right? But to understand why you do it like this is because as my arms lengthen, so do my legs. As my arms lengthen, so do I lift, right? And when you lift, the spine becomes vertical and erect, and the spinal column starts to lift. And then when you sink, you feel a little bit of rounding, and you feel your breath tracking the vertical line. So you inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. And you use the lift and the sink without effort because now everything is integrating. The strengthening or the straightening and the lengthening is passive and elongating, allowing the muscles to relax and the ligaments and the tendons that are connected to the joints stretch. And they find the point where you reach that vertical position, but you don't feel pain when you're in the vertical position because it's not excessive. It's not going to a point where you're locking your joints. It's reaching this sort of destination, and then you let go, and that's part of preparation. But you're building the body mechanics for that. So when you release your elbows and you release your knees, your ankles and your hips kind of correspond to that lower half. Your wrist, your elbow, and your shoulder correspond in the upper half, and you build that relationship that they're moving as a unit. So that's integration of body. Yeah. Why does music seem to help? Because music has a rhythm and a flow to it, and your body kind of can tap into that, and it gets you into that mode. Yeah. So because that's a timed rhythm too, and you feel that as an expression. And it actually calms the mind, you know. And sometimes the mind is, you know, a little bit cluttered, but doing these type of things, that's what active meditation is. And meditation is in the moment. So when you're doing the movements, you're really sort of on the outside, you're looking out, but you're actually looking inward as if you're scanning the motion. So that's part of visualization. So you visualize the movement, and even though we're just doing this as an action, your body will start to pick up on it over time, and it starts to generate smoother and better movements. So because this is working in tandem or in a pair, it's very easy to do. You know, so that's why movements that are like this work a lot easier as a first motion, and it's also the ending movement. So yeah. Because yeah, so you don't want the coordination to be physical. It's an, it's a passive action. So when I get to this point and I start to descend, when my legs go up and it reaches a point, your arms actually will be passive. They're really lengthening based on the fact that you're not. It's like it's like it's like if you're holding my wrists and then my elbows bend and I go like this, my arms straighten. If my elbow's like this and I straighten, it would be like this. But I'm straightening like this. So if my hand is here, you put your hand, if you put your hand here underneath, like this, okay? So I have my hand here, right? If I straighten my arm, I would do that, right? But if I straighten my legs, my hands stay, yeah, so because there's a resistance, then my arm actually is not connected. So it's called connect and disconnect. Your body's joints have to connect and disconnect constantly to adapt to the forces that are acting on your body. So if you don't want resistance to movement, then you have to develop that sensitive. That's actually an important, and it's a critical factor in applying techniques, because you can't resist your opponent's force. You have to adhere to that force as if you're sticking to it. Like if you stick something like a magnet onto a refrigerator door and you open the door, the magnet's there, but it doesn't do anything, right? It can hold a piece of paper, but it's just there because it's adhering. So when you move and you attach, you're adhering. Wherever it goes, you're just with it. But you can only go with it if you don't resist it. Now, if that magnet was attached to a pole that's attached to a wall, and it's sticking there, and you open the door, it won't open because you've got resistance. So the body, the thing is about the thing with our body, the human body, is that it's has this pole, but it's segmented and it bends and it's adaptable. So if something's pushing against my hand and I have a stiff elbow, then I'm going to have a lot of resistance. So my option is to bend. Now, what other option do I have if I don't want to bend my elbow or it can't bend? Then I can turn, or I can retract, or I can push. So when I push, it's in a vertical direction, so we don't see the push as the same, but it's the same idea as an extension of the hand from the shoulder. So when I push down, I'm not really pushing, I'm expanding. And then when I sink down, it folds. So you see more of there than you're going to see here. So the body becomes sort of accommodating the direction of motion. So that's really that's a kind of an advanced skill, because the body has to be really intelligent to know that this is what's happening. But it happens if you have a principle and concept to guide you into those kind of movements. Because, movement to me is the most critical part of how to do that, and is essential to good circulation. And, we have to try to understand this in order to avoid some of the conflicts we have in the body. So it's really more than a physical exercise. It's really building that, relationship between the mind and the body. So mind-body exercise is not just the fact that you're standing there and you're clearing your thoughts. That's meditation, could be stillness. But if you're working with your mind and your body, then your motor skill is even more critical, because you're building the neurons, the wiring to your system. And if you don't constantly rebuild those and expand it, then while some of those are going away, when are you going to replace those, right? So you have to keep it active. So that's why it's important to do that. So while it seems like you're not doing anything, it's actually you're doing a lot, but you don't see it. So let's see, we haven't got too far, huh? Okay, okay, standing position. So this is really to give you more insight as to why these are important. So holding the ball, right? Lower hoop. Upper hoop, shoulder height. This is the shoulder height one. There is one higher, we don't go to that position. Elbows down. Okay, lower. Back to lower hoop to the vertical hand position. And what? Elongate to stack your skeleton in a vertical position. Allow there to be elongation without actually physically creating a stiffness. So that's your natural structure. Right? And then turn the fingertips down. Then you can inhale and exhale. And when you exhale, it feels like your breath reaches the fingertip. breathing. Inhale. So when you do that, even though there's not any movement, you could still feel like surging into your fingers as if it's like a little tingling or pulsing. That's your circulation going to those positions, because even though we're not moving, your musculature is still active. So it has to be constantly replenishing the minute amount of energy to create those positions. So you're relaxed, but yet you're still utilizing the circulation and the energy in your body. So there is oxygen going there. There is so the circulation, you can feel it going and surging into through the fluids in your body, right? So that's what's happening. So you can get that to happen without actually going through a whole lot of physical exercise. That requires some tremendous strength and forces sometimes if you're using bodybuilding. We typically go through this, throughout the day, just moving gently, and there's circulation going. You stay, intact. But this is more structured. So now you're actually building positioning that's dialed in for muscle memory, positioning, the high and the low and the middle. All of these are coming into play. So carry tiger to the mountain brings a transition to these positions using the circle and the hoop, palm in and palm out, and then we cross, we sink the elbow, relax the shoulder, and we pass through the lower hoop. Then we recycle. Then we open and we close, and we open and we close, open, lift, and cross in, lower, and then let the elbows drift out. So you pass through horizontal, vertical, and oblique, right? So this is vertical, parallel. So it's straight and round. You bring it in a little, and then you expand out to here. So it's still about, that's your upper hoop. Now when you drop your elbows, you go to horizontal, then you start to bring it in. That's closing the movement to cross. Then when you drop down, as you descend, it comes down, then it reopens. So when you look from the side view, if I go up and I go out and I start to drop in this position, I'm approaching my natural 45-degree vertical elbow position, and then taking it out of there, this is where my upper arm starts to approach the side of my body, and then it reaches this point, and then I have to open it back up, and then I rise. So all of your joints are involved, because if we go to vertical and I start to come down here, my shoulder starts to cup to create the lower hoop position. So in the lower hoop position, your elbows are out, but it goes out because this is rounding, and then this becomes curved, becomes hollowed. When the chest hollows, the back rounds, and then it continues through. Now this is lifting, but the hand is going slowly up, but you also have your spine that was in this rounded position start to lift. So now we have a lift of the spine, a lift of the arms, and it continues all the way up until we get to this position. Now when it starts to open, then the body has sunk here to capture the downward motion. And then you begin to expand, and then you're here, you see. So there's a lot in that exercise, but once you capture the essence of those subtle exchanges in motion, which is gravity, gentle lifting, we don't have any turning because everything's in a pair. It's parallel and it's working together as a unit. When that is tied into other movements, whether it's Jade Lady work, shuttle, or you're moving, then it has one-sided movement, it has this sided movement, and then they start to work and blend together because the patterns of motion If I go like this, is really that S shape. That's on one side. But once we bring in a one-sided movement, we have to bring in the rotation. So if I turn like this and I turn, I have to turn, and then I'm back to, now you have right and left, up and down. That happens in J Lady Work Shuttle, Beat the Tiger, all these different things. So your body becomes super intelligent because it just knows where it's going to be tracking based on, all the, the patterns and drills that we've been working on. So that is carried, tagged amount. Then we go to infinity sign, and the same thing. Because there are two of them, we sink the elbow, we pull it in, we sink the elbow, and we expand it out. It creates the pattern of the figure 8, the infinity sign, tracking your movement. Where is it? It's right about this horizontal line kind of near the sternum here. And then when we do this, there's a line. And between the two lines, you have that equal pedal. And you have to visualize that the hands are doing this. So the size of that becomes the action of the elbow, the wrist, and the shoulder. And you direct it and you allow the hands to be free of sort of that rigidity that we're talking about, because the movement is driven by your arms, so the fingers can be light. If you focus on the hand, then the elbows don't cooperate and the shoulders not relax, right? So that's why when we do the movement over time, and like I said earlier, you're on that path of discovery, then your body will figure it out. And if you look in the mirror, you can tell if this is too small and that's too big. And you can see if this is big and this is small, this is big, this is small, means your arms are not tracking correctly. Because if this is and this is about the same size, it's really regulated as if this point is your center of that pedal. And you're just going out and in, and you regulate that based on programming, the timing and the change. Because distance and time, they work together. The longer you go, the longer it takes. So if this is going out this way and this is going in this way, the time should be even on both sides. So then here again, I just mentioned that this is 2. What happens when you do 1? You begin to turn. You begin to turn. Now it becomes a right-left movement. So do you regulate the turn by how much? By the amount that your body turns 45 degrees. And by you're back to center. Well, you're back to center here, and then we're here, and then you're back to center here. So the relative center is moving, and your body's turning. So you're tracking that. So that's another level of spatial awareness, but dealing with the space we're talking about. But it still comes down to 45, 45, and 0. So, yeah. Yeah, your abdominal muscles are working like the rest of your body, contracting and relaxing and contracting, but it's very sequential. It's different from doing sit-ups. It's different from planking. That's why those are actually not good exercises. People do them. It's actually not. It makes you stiff. It makes your back stiff. It creates rigidity because a lot of trainers teach it, and a lot of people use it because that's the simplest way to engage those muscles. But it's the worst thing to do if you're trying to create movement, because we're already pretty stiff. Why you want to get stiffer? So, a lot of trainers might be looking at me saying, "Ooh, he's not saying it's good." But the thing is, it's true that it's not so good, because if I'm moving here and here, then actually all of this is engaged. And you get a bunch of muscles in here, and you got your obliques, and you got those intercostal muscles that are all in this area. We only use them to breathe and let it expand when the belly gets big enough to store the food that's in the bigger belly that's inside the stomach, right? But the thing is, these are muscles like every muscle in your body, and they're voluntary muscles. They're part of creating movement. But we do gross movement. We kind of bend, and then if your body's not, if it's excessive, then you end up hurting your back, right? Because when you lift something, you don't really know how much it takes to lift it. You just lift it. Unless you're skillful at lifting, then you kind of can understand how much strength it is, and then you start to increase the contractions to do that. But most people just kind of like, well, this is what it's going to take to lift it. And if it was really light, you know what happens when you lift? Right? You ever push a door that's lighter than you expected, you fall through it. So because we don't know all the time what we're dealing with. So when we're moving, the best thing to do is twist and turn. So the lower lumbar area, most people have a problem because we don't turn it, and it's kind of knotted up and tight. And then the back of the legs are tied to the back as well. So when you bend, if the muscles are tight, it doesn't like you to bend. So range of motion, bending, twisting is everything that we do. When we're here and we twist, you can't do a sit-up. I mean, they do sit-ups and they're twisting. That's a twisting, but they're doing it like that. But you're not on your feet. You're lying on your back. So that's not going to be the same as when you're on your feet and you're turning and twisting, because you're dealing with control of space, and that you have to find that. So while a lot of disciplines do things posturing and they're holding positions, some of it's on the ground, some of it's on your back, some of it's, how's lying on your back going to help walking? How's lying on your back going to help do a lot of the things that we do that we need to be in the standing position? It doesn't, because if you go to the idea of specificity of training, why would you lie on your back to strengthen your body so that when you get up to walk, you're not familiar with it? So the best thing for walking is walking. Best thing for running is running. The speed of running, depending on if it's long distance or sprinting, is really specific to that too. If you want to get fast at running, you got to run fast. And that's how it is. So what we're doing is trying to build integration of body. So how do you improve integration of body? Integrate the body. But through integration of body, you get body intelligence. Body intelligence becomes the kind of intelligence you need for functionality. How do we move? How do we use our body to do certain things? There's so many exercises that kind of replicate certain things that we do, like cross-country skiing, or you have these Nordic track things. Yeah, it simulates the walk kind of, but it's a training to make your muscles for endurance. But it doesn't give you the same sensitivity you need when you're really walking. It works the same group of muscles, but it doesn't really do it for you on this level. So a lot of times when we train, we're just working the muscles. That's all we're doing. Here we're working the mind and the body. So, and for a lot of people, it's too deep. Some people prefer to just work their body because that's how they feel that they're building. And if you're a super athlete, you need to do that. But we're not super athletes. We're just regular people trying to prevent age-related degeneration. I assume that's what we're doing. So that's why I talk a lot about this. And I think society actually needs this. But how many people want to spend 20 years with me listening to this? But you do. So I have at least 5 solid students. Okay, so you want to go through the short form? Oh, we only have 5 minutes. Just enough for the short form. Okay. Sit back and turn the corner. Now we're here. Grasp the sparrow's tail. Single whip. Slant, diagonal, step up, press forward, raise the hand. Bend from the waist, stork flaps wings. Brush knee and push. Sit back, turn. Second brush knee and push. Going forward, going to the left side, step up, brush knee and push. Sit back, forward, twist, step up, brush knee and push. Sit back, strum the lute, close the door, form the fist, punch, sit back, divert, block, and punch. Cross the arms, leopard and tiger springs to mountain. Neutral position, turn, stroke out, fist under elbow. Neutral position, forward, this is repulse the monkey. Okay, one more movement on the left side to complete it. Repulse the monkey, left side push. Then we're going to go to neutral right. We're going to pivot and turn and create the hold the ball position. Sit back, neutral position left, go to vertical, up and down, step forward, fan to the back. Turn, stroke down, invert the hand, parry and punch. Form the fist, create the motion, generate the action, divert, block, and punch. Cross the arms, leopard and tiger springs to mountain. Turn, carry tiger to the mountain, cross the arms, raise the hand. Bend from the waist, stork flaps wings, turn. 1, 2, 3. Hook your wrist and turn to the corner. Hold the ball. Flip the hands over, diagonal flying. Sit back, pot the horse's mane. Step up, stroke down, pot the horse's mane. Cross corner, Jade Lady work shuttle. Cross corner, Jade Lady work shuttle. Turn to the front, hook your wrists, and cloud hands. Return, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hook your wrists, single whip. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2 to close. And deep breathing. Ready? Inhale. Good. So that's what we do. And this is just a vehicle, a platform to get these ideas across. Because if you didn't have some way of doing this or teaching it, it's you can't achieve with it. So you have to you have to stay consistent with what you're doing in order to go through that discovery, you know. I mean, everything on earth today has been discovered through discovery of mistakes, right? You learn through, you know, they didn't build buildings like this day one, you know. First they built shacks and they used tree limbs, and then they made real wood, and then they realized that you needed better material to build these tall buildings. So you had to invent steel. It just goes on and on. Peter, what's up? Okay. Well, all right. So that's it. I think. Hope you got a lot of insight on the warm-ups and see the value in it. And that's it. You get what you get out of it, right? What's that? Yeah. 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 It's just a blend of my life experience, and like you wouldn't be able to go to a school and learn this, even though this is a school, to learn this, on a like on a mass scale, because it's just too much time and too much for you to go through a class like that and get anything out of it. It's so that's why something like this, like a musician, it's just like it just goes on forever until you figure it out. You Oh, congratulations! Jeez, I think I just wished you a happy birthday last year. It's that this one year went by like we missed it. Tomorrow, right? March 1st. Oh no, no, not March 1st is Monday to 26th. 50.